I'm going to ask each of you to, and this won't count in the exercise, but you're doing a public service. As other people in future years or even today are going to be listening to the recording, they're not going to have any idea what the subject is that you're talking about. So the only thing that I will ask you to do is to just, before you start and get into the role that you're playing, just simply indicate what the issue is that you'll be talking about, so that so you don't have to do that, obviously, in your 90 seconds, but it will help someone else who knows, for example, that you're talking about the company that the issue that the company is having. Does that make sense? Okay. The next thing is I'm going to ask you all to just make your clocks at 90 seconds, so that you are 1 minute and 30 seconds, so that you can have your own timer, because it will be critical that you stop at 90 seconds. And I just want to explain a little bit. I'm sure you probably already are totally aware of this, but I think one of the most powerful, and I apologize, Em and Dean, I did not introduce myself. I'm Gail O'Brien. Excuse me. The other two already know me. I think that one of the most important things in my 10 years plus of being an Uber judge or a judge is the experience of what you all are doing for the 90-second, because it is the most realistic of what's going to happen in your business life. And this is a practice for how you speak up when you're involved in a conversation and no one's talking about something that you really think is important. And so this is a takeaway from IBEC that you can use, automatically. So it's just a really wonderful role playing that Tom White came up with. I'm going to read you the 90-second presentation, and I'm going to elaborate on it a little bit. You are really no longer representing Top Hat Consulting or Sane Consulting or Social Solutions. Gone. You are an employee who happens to know the issue that people are talking about because you've been looking into it. And obviously you use the information that you had when you were a consultant, but you're simply an employee, and you take that information that you think is important to share. And this is about speaking up. So it is about the persuasion that you want to have in having people pay attention, your colleagues and your peers, in paying attention to something that nobody is mentioning. Now, you already know that, but I just wanted to clarify it. So we all on the same page? Okay. So imagine you are an employee of the company whose case that you've been studying in a different life. You are at a meeting in which people are discussing this issue that you know about. However, no one has brought up ethics. There's a pause in the conversation. You have 90 seconds in which to convince the other people at the meeting that there are ethical issues that need to be addressed. You don't have to argue for a solution. You just need them to see that there are ethical issues here. And you each represent the one person who's going to do it. After we do it, I will give you some feedback, and then you can ask me any questions. Are we good? All right. So this time, I would like Natalie to go first, Saint Anselm, and Dean to go second, and Jacob to go third. And keep in mind that each of you will start for the good of the whole. And just before you actually use the thing, you've got less than a minute to just simply set up what people need to know about the issue. Thank you. And then when you start going into your actual thing, Natalie, if you could just sort of raise a finger or do something so I know that I need to put the timer on, okay?
Okay, so I have a minute to just explain what we've researched.
Well, no, you have a minute to explain the issue so that somebody who's listening and doesn't know, because you're not going to be doing that in your 90 seconds. You want a time, obviously, it would ruin what you're doing. You just simply want to let them know your topic. And so you can orient them just simply with, so that when they hear you speak, they know the context. So
Okay.
so that it becomes a meaningful experience for them, but it has nothing to do with, what the exercise is.
Okay.
All right, so start, and then when you're done, nod your head or something so I know that I need to put the timer on.
Sure. Okay. So we researched the problem of echo chambers on social media, specifically echo chambers on Twitter. And so our research was focused on consulting for Twitter, advising them on the issue that echo chambers are, which is users based on their likes and people that they follow. It's the algorithm that is used by the social media company, in this case, Twitter. They use an algorithm to sort the content, so like recommended content for you. The echo chamber is created when the algorithm picks content that's only related to content that you typically view. So what that means in effect is that you are not exposed to opinions that you don't agree with typically. Okay. So that is the issue of an echo chamber, and we argued that this is an ethical problem that Twitter needs to address, and we offered some solutions.
Okay, great.
So I will go ahead and begin. Imagine that you live in a world in which everybody lives in small groups, and group A talks about ideas and they listen to each other's opinions, and that's it. And then there's group B, and they listen to each other's opinions, but they never listen to the opinions of group A, and so on. And there are many, many groups like this that each have their own unique opinions that are never shared. This is the problem of echo chambers, and this is a problem that is becoming prevalent on social media. People are surrounded by ideas that are only ideas that they agree with, and they are never exposed to the opinions of people who don't agree with them. And this is an ethical problem for our company, because people have the right to be able to make informed decisions about what they're doing. It would be completely unfair to ask someone to make a decision based off of partial information. So people have a right to have that wider variety of ideas to make smart decisions about their life. And we, as our company, Twitter, we are committed to having an open exchange of ideas. We say that, we're very proud of it. And we are a purpose-driven company. We do more than just make a profit. We exist for the good of our users as well. And this is why we need to take this issue seriously.
Okay. Stop it. All right. Thank you very much, Natalie. Dean, do you want to just give your 1 minute or as little as you want? We don't need a lot of detail. This is really only just to help people understand what you're going to be talking about. So I'm going to start it when you start opening.
Yeah, so our company is essentially the ICC, which is the International Code Council. We're a nonprofit organization where we come together. We have a lot of local officials vote on building codes, and these building codes often influence different local government officials on how to make buildings more sustainable to help the society, just help our communities be more sustainable in general. However, in recent years, there has been a lot of different deals with organizations such as the National Gas Association, and a lot of the codes that would help us increase energy efficiencies have not been upheld. And they've also ended the open voting process for a lot of different representatives. So that's what we would like to address today, because we believe that that creates an ethical concern.
Great, thank you. I'm going to cancel this and get back the 90 seconds.
Can I get started now?
Yes, you can.
Okay. My name is Amadee Lewis Charles. The question is no longer why sustainability should be addressed, but how it should be addressed. You already know that humanity is entering a dangerous red zone in terms of irreversible changes to environments. Building codes are considered a low-hanging fruit in terms of decreasing energy usage, as they allow us to make small investments with large long-term impacts. But if building codes are primarily influenced by industry groups that put profits ahead of the planet and environmental sustainability, it appears as a conflict of interest, which will hinder our abilities to make the progress that we must make to lower carbon emissions and create sustainable buildings and communities. As an organization, we, the ICC, have the power to influence building codes that can prevent thousands of people from being relocated. We can save millions of lives and save billions of dollars in the long run. However, we cannot have this impact when our codes have only had a 1% increase in energy efficiency since 2012. Look, I get it. Some changes are going to cost vested interests in the short run, but let's figure it out together. Let's not have any more undisclosed deals with biased industry groups. We can do it. We can find solutions without making trade-offs for the future. As a fellow employee of the ICC, I encourage you to fight. Fight for equal voting opportunities for all stakeholders. Fight for a better future for my generation, and hopefully the next generation after will be able to reside in a safer environment. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Perfect. So I'm going to be speaking just to give a brief overview. Our focus is on consulting Nestle and giving them suggestions about how they can expand into, in particular, Cameroon, which is a rapidly growing market, but it's one in a country with high levels of endemic poverty, government corruption. There's 2 civil wars going on, so there's lots of ethical issues that unfold when you try to do business in an environment that has lots of very risky behavior going on that could potentially involve Nestle itself. So with that, am I good to start?
You're good to start as an employee of Nestle, yes. But wait a minute, let me cancel out what I had and put you into 90 seconds. Let me know when you want to start.
Perfect. I'll go now. So I completely understand that there's a lot of money available here, and this is a great business opportunity. But I don't think we've thought long and deep enough about just what we could potentially be getting ourselves involved into here. There's 2 ongoing civil wars. Are we prepared to have Nestle, our money, our people, our investments, potentially aiding and abetting terrorism, forced labor, crony capitalism, issues like that? There's also just this issue of how are we setting up the corporation and our corporate presence here? What are we incentivizing? Are we going to be encouraging product managers and project managers to simply just tear down as much forest as they can, to build as many farms as possible, to build as many factories as possible, regardless of any quality controls? Is that how you're going to get promoted? And then if so, are we going to be prepared to deal with the consequences when a factory falls down, when a farm is crushed in a mudslide? It's not only about who's going to be signing on the dotted line, but who's going to be able to sleep at night knowing the consequences of the action, the system we're putting into place. And perhaps most importantly, I think we also need to be very aware of the potential positive ethical benefits going on here. How often can we sincerely say that Nestle's products or our investments or our employees are meaningfully changing the trajectory of people's lives anywhere? Our presence in Cameroon has the potential to meaningfully create ladders of opportunity for people, safer and better products available to people, and deal with terrible diseases like anemia, or just providing opportunity that's so often so rare.
All right, thank you very much. All 3 of you did really good jobs. So what I'd like to do, going in order, is give feedback first to Natalie, and then to Annandine, and then to Jacob. And then you can ask any questions. I think I'll give the feedback first and then let you ask any questions rather than interrupting the feedback. Okay. So I'm going to change my view so I can see you better. Great. So Natalie, I think that it was an interesting start to begin with a unique problem never shared, talking about setting people up for the context that you had. I think you talked about a number of issues that employees would likely care about. And I think that the concept of an informed decision is an important one. And you talked about purpose-driven. It might have been nice if you could have pulled in any of the values of Twitter or what the purpose of Twitter was as a reinforcement. It may be that the company doesn't talk about that to their employees, but it's always a very uncomfortable thing when we remind the organization that we're working for and our employees that we say we do X and we're not. But I think in 90 seconds, you attracted attention and you raised some options. So thank you. That was really very good.
Thank you.
Annandine, you had a tremendous amount of passion. And I think passion is a wonderful thing. You might want to consider whether you, in a situation, if you were doing this, you would want to be as passionate for the whole 90 seconds, or if there would be certain parts that you would particularly want to emphasize, because while passion is highly needed and necessary, people may not be listening to the same level of intensity over a minute and a half that they might be if you were using the intensity for the particular key points that you wanted to make. Does that make sense? But I think that there was no way anybody could get away from not listening to the fact that you do strong attention. You had some wonderful lines. We have the power to save millions of lives. We have and I didn't get writing all this down, but you talked about the finding solutions to make life better. And so you hit on the chord, the heart chord, really, of what is, in fact, the company doing if it is not paying attention to, to these kinds of things. I don't know much about the International Code Council. It's not the same as a normal company. So your level of passion may well have been really appropriate to that environment. But I'm just, speaking in general, what matters about passion is that we use it in the context that is going to best serve what our environment is. And so I'm assuming that that's what you did. And I think that that was an effective way to get attention. Although some dialing back would not be a bad idea if you were to do that again in real life. So thank you. I think it was great, as has been said. All right, Jacob, I liked your opening, so I completely understand. I think that was an easy way in for people to feel that they were heard, and so they will listen perhaps more. And I think you raised some important questions about what are we incentivizing? Is that how you get promoted? Who's going to sleep at night? I mean, these are uncomfortable things for people to hear, but they are very relevant to how people live. And the notion of asking the question again, which I think is a really important one for employees to ask, as really all of you have asked, whether the company that you are in this role in making meaningful changes, whether it's in anything else. So again, very good. You did a great job, as did all of you. So what questions do you have of me, of my feedback? Anything?
Ma'am, I was curious, do you have any personal firsthand experience with situations like this, or any like personal reflection, like personal insight into what mistakes people actually make when they're not, sent an email in advance detailing the 90-second opportunity that's going to come their way at 12:45 on a Friday, and all the circumstances around it?
I'm not sure, Jacob, I understand. Are we talking about IBEX specifically, and are we talking about IBEX exercise, or are we talking in general about somebody being asked to be put in?
I mean, like, are you either from personal experience or otherwise familiar with actual instances where there is kind of like an employee who has a brief,
Yes.
chance to make an elevator pitch for an ethical concern, and like what mistakes they make when it's out of the blue and they're not told and prepared in advance?
Well, but the thing is, you're speaking out of your heart. I mean, all of us are going to be, and it can be in the dorm. It can be a discussion around something that the institution that you're in school with is changing and doing that, in your view, hasn't been thought through. So as people are just sitting around, you're the one who says, wait a minute, this is going to have huge disadvantage for people on scholarship, or this is going to have implications for people who have already got lots of benefits. They're more likely to get more awards because of X, or how you're framing it. I mean, the point is that the exercise is important because we often don't think about the ethical implications, and people don't stand up to say something, and it isn't easy. A woman named Mary Gentile, who was been a professor at Yale and at Babson, and she just retired from UVA, has written a book called Giving Voice to Values. And the whole point of that book is it is really hard to just inject yourself into a conversation where you may be saying something that people may not agree with, or may be uncomfortable, that you're raising the obvious but the difficult. And so giving voice to values is really about how you practice speaking up, if you need to practice. I mean, what you three did today is something that can easily be done around any kind of issue, whether it is, that affects ethics. So for all of us, it's about practice. But you've started, and that's what's really important. And you make a judgment about how far you can go based in the group. But I think the style of asking questions, or the style of pointing out, various things. There are so many things happening in the country today that people are not in our country, people in the world that we're talking about, that one wonderful way of avoiding, I don't know that this is exactly true, and you can tell me if you don't agree, but one way of avoiding misinformation is when people come up with an angle or an idea that no one's talking about, that if they did talk about, could be a game changer. once you start talking about Twitter, for example, if somebody hasn't been thinking about these issues and you point out, what was pointed out, or in Dean's case, if people are kind of going along with what the company is saying about what they need to do, and they're not whitewashing so much, but they're avoiding getting to the heart of that there's a problem that they're not being transparent about, and an employee sees something and raises a question and has done the research to know that, wait a minute, you need to know X or Y. Or in your case, when you're talking about an affluent company that may not be sharing all of its information with people, and you've done some work into it, you have things to say that could easily be taken. I was talking last year to a judge who had worked with Tom White when he was a student, and he had actually I think he did IBEC as an undergraduate twice. And then when he went to graduate school, he did IBEC a third time. And I believe it's at least two, I think it's three. And he was making the comment to me that he is working in a company that deals with sales and a variety of other things. And just a couple of years ago, he was uncomfortable that the CEO was not paying attention to the fact that one of their products was not performing as well. It was breaking down. It was not serving customers. And so he wrote him an email, and he said, and he wasn't high up in the company. He just said, I want to point out X, Y, and Z data that you may not be aware of that would suggest that we're putting customers at a disadvantage, that this product is really not something that I think we should be selling. I'm uncomfortable with it because of the things I've just said. And the CEO sent him an email and said, I'd like to talk to you about this. And so he went to see the CEO. Those were in the days when everyone was in their office and they could, find their way up there. And although it's happening 60% now. And they had a half an hour conversation. And what the CEO did the next month, they had monthly sort of all town meetings that happened to be, bringing people together from different divisions. The CEO mentioned, we're not going to be doing this product anymore. It was brought to my attention. This is the kind of thing I need you all to be paying attention to. Now, not every CEO is likely to be as open as that, but how do we know if we're working in a company or in an organization and we don't raise things that are questions and that has data behind it that ultimately is not working, that we really want it to work? And most of the time, leaders pay attention to that. They may give you more information than you knew, but the odds are that caring enough to speak up and raise questions is one of the most powerful things that any of us can do. Now, does that answer what you're saying, Jacob, or did I go off on a tangent that has nothing to do with what you wanted to hear?
No, that was exactly what I was wondering about, was how it actually manifests more in like real professional environments rather than prepared competitions.
It really does. And the higher up you get, the more comfortable it is, I think, in being able to say to your boss, once you've been there a while, it doesn't even mean that the higher up, but once you have, once you're not brand new and they know who you are, they have a sense of you, that kind of capacity to be open and honest about the questions of how things are working. When I was recruited to Mitsubishi Motor Manufacturing after their sexual harassment lawsuit, and my job was to help change the culture. And everybody was very protective of the culture because they felt the media was doing them a tremendous injustice. They were making it much worse than it was. And people weren't receptive to the idea that, yeah, you're in this trouble because in fact, the trouble happened. And so I came in with a lot of Anne and Dean's passion and realized that I needed to dial back any judgment that I was feeling, because you do feel judgment, rightly or wrongly, when you realize that line workers have had the opportunity without a lot of rules that would stop that, to behave in ways to women that were not respectful. And so I had somebody on my team, I was heading up something, and I inherited someone who was adamantly opposed that I was missing the whole point about what these people were going through. So then you figure out that not everybody, obviously only a small number of people are affected, but you figure out how you can communicate so that they can hear you when you talk about what kind of culture we could have. And you learn not to talk in a way that would make it hard for them to take on new ideas because they were so sensitive to being wronged. And so that's all part of what jobs are. And you're going to find that in probably everything you do, that your communication skills are absolutely essential, but so is your courage, because most people don't want to screw up and they don't want to do things wrong. And voices of people who see things and raise questions help leaders identify future leaders. Wouldn't you agree? And you're all, the three of you are potential leaders. So speaking up and figuring out how to do it in a way that works is not going to give you trouble in your life unless you do it in a way that, and people are more emboldened. The research indicates that people are much more, employees now are much more emboldened to speak out. I think I may have this wrong, I think it's 60, according to an Edelman survey, 60% of the people surveyed were more likely than last year to speak up about issues that they disagreed with, but they would do it to the company. 40% of employees were apparently not as interested in talking about it to the company. They would be willing to go public with it. So we're in an environment where there's going to be probably more, more of that than less. Much more than you needed to know. I apologize, but I hope that answers the question. Anything else? Well, I'm delighted that you had this exercise, and I'm delighted that you did well in it. And I think that it's really important to realize you've got those skills and can do it anytime you want when you feel it's needed. And this is the end of your IBEC experience until I guess there's something happening on Monday, but I just want to acknowledge that I have a strong awareness of the amount of work and time that you must have put into all of this. And it really matters. Just so you know that, it matters for you, but it's also wonderful for us to see how seriously it was taken and how well you all did. So thank you.
Thank you very
ma'am,
much.
And thank you for the advice and suggestions as well.
I wish you all good things in your continuing your academic career and thinking about how you're going to make it work for you to find a career that helps your sense of purpose, if you haven't already. So good luck.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback.
Our pleasure. Bye.